let's go back to the Psaki story because we never fully read that article about what she said, her comments. So Psaki confronted claims no economist is predicting higher inflation from massive spending bill, the Political Insider. NBC Peter Alexander, Americans are seeing their dollars, their paychecks stretched right now. Why should Americans now be concerned that injected another $1.57 trillion or more would raise inflation? Psaki answers, because no economist out there is projecting that this will have a negative impact on inflation. Psaki said on Monday, suggested the spending spree would actually help combat inflation.
Jesus Christ.
God. Economists across the board will say this will actually help reduce inflation, address inflation over the long term. She said if Psaki can find no economist who thinks inflation is a growing problem, she needs only contact former Obama economic advisor Larry Summers, who said we are going to see inflation of a kind we haven't seen in 30 years, which has already happened since 1991.
We've been screaming a lot today, but let's give a quick summary for our wonderful audience, and thank you for being out there. And if you like it, hit the subscriber there. There's three things, and you can help me here, three things that will help inflation. Increasing the value of the money, which means increasing the interest rates. Second is causing the government's current deficit to be shrunk, so the government's borrowing less. And lastly is to shrink the money supply. Those are not Republican or Democrat things. These are just aren't these just the sliders that moderate inflation?
Okay, so
we just printed how much money, and we increased our budget deficit in the current year by the spending. So we ran 2 out of the 3 really up to red line, did we not?
We did. What's important to realize, though, is that the growth of the money supply is what matters, not the absolute level of the money supply. So in June of 2020, the money supply in the United States was growing by 30%. That's collapsed to 3.8% because Congress is paralyzed.
This is M1.
This is M4. This is the biggest aggregate you can have. So that's gone from 30%.
The whole enchilada.
The whole enchilada. 30% growth rate down to a 3.8% growth rate as of September. So we're not injecting more money into the economy. I'm actually going to do something that.
But doesn't
I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier, Patrick.
What's that?
Psaki's right that this particular infrastructure spending bill is not. In fact, Tyler, can you pull up the quill again and go to the last page? There you go. No, the very last page. That right there. That's when all this starts to kick in. It's like it peaks out in 2026.
Can you explain to us what that is?
That is, a 10-year infrastructure program doesn't hold a candle to stimmy checks. And the money's going to trickle out into the economy. And as Biden has told us, it's going to create lots of union jobs. Yay! And this is why this will not, in and of itself, ignite inflation, because you're not actually going to get out there tomorrow with private companies to make sure that you don't waste taxpayer money and get these damn projects underway immediately. It takes a long time. Permitting. Again, you're working through unions. And so it's by definition going to be inefficient. But that does not change the dynamics at the ports. That does not change the dynamics about rental inflation. It doesn't change the dynamics about the damn bacon. All of that inflation is very real right now. But this is going to be like the Obama infrastructure plan was. It's going to be
a scary sight, by the way, looking at
nothing. 2026 is when we're going to see the highest impact on GDP, which peaks out at just over 0.5%. Woohoo! Yeah, but you give people money directly. You direct deposit $5 trillion into people's checking accounts. Yeah, it's going to get spent.
Hey, Tyler, can you do me a favor and pull up the Bloomberg article about Powell's 5 benchmarks for inflation? If you have that with you. And then I just sent you a picture as well. We'll cover that here in a minute on what Fauci just said, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, Bloomberg Powell 5 inflation benchmark, and it'll come up. This is a story from yesterday. Boom, right there you go.
He's pulling this up.
So check this out. Check this out, Tom. So
Powell's that puppy out.
So Powell's 5. Okay, go to see if you can get rid of the. Okay, there you go. Number 1, are inflation pressures broad-based? In August, Powell said the spike in inflation up until that point was largely the result of price rises in a narrow group of goods and services directly affected by the pandemic. That's no longer the case, right? So he was talking about across the board, beyond the usual suspects. Yep. Gasoline, okay, fantastic. Go to the next one. Number 2, are price rises moderating in those goods and services that have experienced the biggest run-ups. So while there were some signs that was happening a few months ago, it's no longer so clear-cut. Yes, used car price inflation has come down a lot from its 45.2% in June, though it's still running in excess of 25%.
And Manheim just released new data that shows that through the middle of November, every used car prices have accelerated. It just takes a little while to show up in the CPI data. So that 25%, it's going up.
Okay, so that price is going up, and he says annual prices rise for durable goods in general, though clocked in at 7.3% in September, biggest increase since 1981. Okay, fine. Let's go to the third one. What is happening to wages? Powell told the Jackson Hole conference that he saw little evidence of wage increases that might threaten excess inflation. Worker pay has picked up since then as employees have taken advantage of plentiful job openings to quit in record numbers in search of better opportunities. I know you got data on that, which we'll get to that here in a second, right after this. So we believe the U.S. is entering the tightest labor market conditions since 1950s. Holy moly. Number 4, what is happening to long-term inflation expectations? Fed policymakers pay a lot of attention to what Americans are thinking about prices because officials believe that goes a long way to determine how long it goes. If workers and companies are fearful of prices spiraling onward, they'll act in ways that will help bring that about. Okay, go to the fifth one. Let's see what the fifth one is. Number 5 is, are longer-term global forces still pushing down inflation? Over the past quarter century, inflation has generally been low in the U.S. and across the there are signs, though, that some of the forces may be becoming less powerful.
China's sticking it to us.
No question about it, because they can't, and no one's fighting back and saying anything about it. So, okay, so you were talking about labor forces of people quitting.
Okay.
You want to get into that?
There are two, and I think this is the last chart that that we're going to pull up from my weekly. Go back a page. Focus in on the bottom right hand of page 9. All right. So you pay people a ton of money to not work, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a deficit compared to the prior.
And they don't, right on cue.
And prior to COVID, this is the trend line, the yellow dotted line.
Damn.
We're 7.8 million jobs below that line. Some of it's because people have retired early. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's because people have gotten used to not working. And a lot of it is also because if you're an employer and you see this 20-month gap on somebody's resume, is that an attractive potential employee? Mm-mm. Or do you want the guy who's one of the 4.4 million who's like, I haven't quit working. My skill set's hot. I haven't. None of my worker skills have atrophied.
Yes.
I want to hire that person, so that there's the haves and the have-nots in the labor force. And the have-nots have been taught to behave like socialists. Mm-hmm. We're going to pay you to not work, and then you're going to get used to it, so you're not going to work. And by the way, you're not just going to not work, and we're going to pay you for it. You're going to be unemployable at the other end. While companies have accelerated automation, you've seen investment in R&D and artificial intelligence. Any form of software, you've seen companies automate out of existence millions of jobs. But if you have the skills, you can name your price. So there is a great big divide going right down the middle.
Skills always win, man. It's so great. This is such a great.
Skills do always win, but we took skills away from people by paying them to not work, and now they're unemployable.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
of course.
If that's good policy.
Why do you say that they're unemployable when there's a work shortage and people can't hire enough
I'll ask
people?
you a question.
If you have demonstrated that you're going to run out on me, why take a risk on you versus her?
Or do you have the basic skill set?
Yeah, but the question is whether,
because a lot
of
of
course she's going to be okay. What's the whole thing that we say at Dunkin' Donuts? If you don't like the long line, apply for a job. There's a lot of people that
they don't want those jobs.
Exactly. And there's something that we're not talking about that we can.
And by the way, plus,
is how many people are not going back to their shitty ass jobs because they made $1 billion from crypto. There's a lot of young people that are 20 years old that started investing in Dogecoin or in Bitcoin or in Ethereum, and they were worth negative money prior to 2020, and now they're worth 50 grand, 100 grand.
I don't think
there's a lot of young people out there that are not going to go back in the workforce because they've made money from crypto.
Okay, and I'm happy for them, but I don't think they probably comprise nearly 8 million people.
I'm just saying young people.
Okay.
A lot of young people.
It could. So look, there's a few things you can take into account with that. One is that community, but what percentage that 7.9 you think that is?
Yeah,
What do you
maybe
think it is?
10%. I don't
Okay,
know, not
let's
even
say
that.
a big number like that. It's probably not that big of a percent. It's probably 3 or 5%. But let's just say that's what it is.
Sure.
Out of the 7.9, let's take some that are 65 and up, 63 and up, 62 and
They're
up.
like, I want my Social Security now.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like, listen, man,
And they
I'm
were
out.
in-
I'm
they were in-
good.
Oh, and
Some
by
of
the
those
way,
people are coming back to the
Tom, you're
workforce,
going to have
though.
the answer to this question. What is the difference in income if you collect Social Security at the youngest age versus starting at the oldest age to collect?
62 versus 70, you're saying.
How much does?
Well,
how much,
my monthly
lot
check.
different, yeah.
My monthly check is when I'm 65. Is big.
right, but if you wait
Not
until
if you wait till you're 70, it's way
If
bigger.
you wait until you're 70,
Yes.
the differential between the two is 30%.
Oh, yeah.
If you
For
can
waiting,
wait.
waiting
right.
5 years.
Yeah.
The longer you can wait, the bigger your
You're
checks
talking
will
about
be. is what you're
59 and a
saying.
half to 70.
Yes, I'm saying if you cover that, so a lot of people who left the workforce early and started to collect Social Security early have left a ton of money on the table because they're getting all these stimulus checks. Their house is worth more than it's ever been worth, and they're like, "Screw it, I'm quitting."
You know, this is
So I'm
really
going to start
interesting.
collecting my Social Security early. But how's that going to feel in a few years?
Those people are going to go back to work.
You know,
by the way.
there was a time.
We are going to see seniors come back into the workforce,
Yeah.
and you know what? They're going to be more employable than the younger people who have been replaced.
I don't think so at all. Why would older people be more employable?
They're going to be more employable than the person who was replaced by a kiosk. And companies have
Totally disagree.
Companies have lamented the fact that people who are 55 plus have better work ethics than younger workers.
55 plus, maybe,
who
not
want
65
flexible
plus.
hours, and they don't want to come into the office, and they want to make sure that they can. I mean, okay, here's a little anecdote. Talk about the 4.4 million who are quitting their jobs. A buddy of mine runs a huge logistics company for, I don't know, the biggest telecommunications company in the country. But he runs a logistics division. So he has a new employee. After 2 days, the guy quits. Why? Because he doesn't like the color of the safety vest. It's orange. And he didn't like even though it was required to be worn on the floor of the factory, it's just.
So you don't get
everybody's-
hit by a
everybody's-
forklift.
Everybody's
What's the
got to wear
problem?
the orange vest. And the guy, after 2 days, he's like, I can get a better job. I don't like the orange vest. Bye.
I don't think
And
it has to do with
he
the
can't go
orange
get a better
vest.
job.
He probably just wanted a better job.
No, no,
the
no,
orange
no.
vest wasn't the.
Then why did he take the job in the first place?
I don't know. I don't know who the kid is, but you're not going to leave a job because
2
the
whole
color
days.
of the vest.
No.
Is this
This
like
person,
a
no.
LGBT anti what
This
cancel
person was in
culture
their
orange
30s.
vest thing?
No, it's
what's
not.
wrong with orange vest?
It's not about that. I think the cat's really confusing you today.
So what it is
You're
about the orange
colorblind. It's
So,
just,
all right, what's the point of the orange vest? Tell the story then.
He didn't like the way it looked.
Oh, stop it.
I'm not.
He
You knew
let
that.
me tell you.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
you think that's the reason he left the job because the color of the vest?
That is
Stop
what
it.
he told
That's
his
what
boss.
he told his boss.
Okay.
After
And
working the
he's
job for
not there
48
anymore.
hours. That's what he said. I refuse to wear the orange vest. And,
this
the guy's
is-
like, it's
This
policy.
is,
you know what?
but
There's
this is
something
where
here.
I'm going. This is where I'm going. Well, you know where this leads me to? Here's where this leads me to. On what she just said, that's 7.8 million. On what he just said, and you look at that number, and if I'm Amazon, if I'm Walmart, if I'm any of these companies, I'm sitting there saying, we kind of got to figure out a way to not rely on workers because they complain too much. They constantly want more. They want to do this. They want to do that. and
Automate,
sometimes
automate,
they're gonna
automate,
No
Yeah.
problem.
automate.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.